Welcome to the How You Breathe is How You Live podcast. I'm your host, Jake Parent, and I'm joined as always by my co-hosts, Josh and Riley. And we're moving into part 3 of our series, The Unusual Effectiveness of Breathwork. In our first episode of this series, we broke down why breathwork is the ultimate bottom-up hack for your nervous system and the effects of breathwork. Relaxation and letting go of the steering wheel, that it can be emotional without a story. Your mind goes quiet. You have releases or insights without thoughts. You experience the awe and confusion of transcendence. Like, how do you explain any of that from just breathing? Next, we explored the breath operating system, the chemistry of breathing and how breathwork shifts the chemistry of your body, and how shifting your pH levels can quiet the ego's frantic inner PR rep and move you from a 9 out of 10 emotional trigger to a manageable 2. If how you breathe is how you live, then a lot of people are living in a shallow, frantic crawl, grasping at the neck and wondering why the world feels stress-ridden. Today, we're looking at the mechanical descriptors of the breath, and you're in control of each one of these. Now, 99% of the time, breathing is subconscious, just like your life. Being aware of each of these will create awareness in the other areas of your life. Let's get into it. A lot of people think the problem of life is stress or anxiety or not knowing what to do with their life, basically having clarity. But the real problem is that we're living unconsciously, and most of us don't even know it. We are unconsciously unconscious. There's a difference between being unaware and living unconsciously. Unawareness is that you don't see it yet. You don't see the patterns, feel what's underneath, if you don't understand what's driving your reactions. It's a blind spot. But unconscious living is different. That's when your life is being run by those patterns. You're reacting instead of choosing, repeating instead of evolving, living out a life plan you never consciously chose. This is the general roadmap for most people's lives. First, you're unaware. You don't see it. Then you become aware, but nothing really changes. You still react the same way. You still get upset or frustrated. You still end up in the same loops. It's a frustrating stage. I know this about myself, so why do I keep doing it? And then there's the third level, consciousness. You see the pattern, finally, hooray, and now you can interrupt it. You can feel it happening in real time and make a different choice. Big shifts start happening. The cost of living unconsciously isn't just the stress or the struggle, it's the life that you don't get to experience, the version of you that never fully comes online, the opportunity to real life that never happens. An unconscious life doesn't just hurt more, it feels less. It's numb. And today we're going to break down how you move from being unaware to aware to conscious, where you can finally start living on purpose. So what is the cost of going through life unaware and not conscious? It's easy to think, yeah, okay, but not me. And that's the trick of being unaware. You're not aware that you aren't aware, and it's a vicious loop. You might have a sneaking suspicion that something is off. Low-grade stress and repetition of mundane, boring, tedious, monotonous life, while at the same time being stressful. You find yourself in the same emotional loops, a different company or a job in the same blocks, same arguments in relationships, but just with different people. Same starts and stops in your progress. It's the same dull pattern over and over again. There's opportunities you don't take and experiences that are missed. Life is happening, but on a boring autopilot. Time is the most valuable resource any of us have, and it is slipping by. You only pass this way but once. And one day you'll look up and realize you actually didn't choose most of your life. You just followed the path in front of you without noticing. The most expensive part of an unconscious life is the life you don't experience. The only way that you can find those fulfilling things in your life is having the ability to explore. And to find those things, or to snap out of that, you may need an aha moment of insight in your life. Whoa. Life can be better than this gray, stress-ridden existence I've been walking through. And breath work can be one of those modes that creates that aha vision of your life to a life lived more fully. It's not the only way, but it's the most reliable way that I know of. And Your breath isn't just a relaxation tool or an insight generator, but it's a system of creating awareness. Because your moods aren't just in your mind, they're physical, that your moods and feelings are how your body feels. And every pattern in your life, from stress to shutdown to reactivity, has a matching breathing pattern. So if your mood is physical, the fastest way to shift it is through your body and through your breath. And when you change your breathing, you change your blood chemistry. That affects your nervous system, that creates space. And in that space, you have a choice. Breath regulates you and it opens you. It gives you an opportunity to access novelty, to explore something new or untried or original. The opposite of the unconscious loop isn't just being calm, it's being able to explore something genuinely new. A thought you haven't had before, a feeling that surprises you, a response that isn't the one you always give. That's what novelty actually means. Not something exotic, but something that isn't just the same thing again. And once you begin to explore and reach into novel things, life begins to expand because the energy in you is expanding. Sure, you're going to experience calm from breath work, but that calmness is giving you access. It's giving you access to awareness, to being conscious and feeling and choice and experiences that weren't available to you before. Breath is the fastest way to move from being run by your system to begin designing the system. And once you understand how to use it, everything begins to change.
Can you say a few more words about your nervous system changes and that creates space? Okay. Holding space, it gets very sloshy, say in more concrete terms.
You can also think of space as energy and money as energy, that if your financial account is near zero and you get a flat tire, that's very upsetting. If, on the other hand, you have plenty of money and you get a flat tire, it's mildly annoying. And the same thing happens with us emotionally and energetically, that if we are at the limits of what we're capable of all of the time, because we have a very narrow window of what we're capable of handling, of the capacity and the ability that we have to handle that situation, we're going to have outsized reactions to the events that take place. And that is the space that you're creating, is, do I have the ability to deal with hardships, setbacks, things not going my way, and being able to have a consistent response to that instead of flying off the handle.
The physical comparison would be what makes people feel claustrophobic. You feel like you can't escape the confined space that you're in is what makes it feel like there isn't enough room or there isn't enough space.
And what we're trying to do when we're creating that space through breath work is it's creating more strength emotionally, mentally, spiritually for you to deal with the vicissitudes of life. And that's what I mean by space, is you have a greater capacity to deal with life at an appropriate level.
Would you call that emotional resilience?
That is, emotional resilience is how fast can you return to center. And part of emotional capacity is how fast can you return to center. But it's also giving you equanimity, which is different. Equanimity is how much does it take to push you off of center. And with equanimity or with calmness, it's not that you don't experience emotions. It's that you experience them more slowly, more gradually. That if you have a healthy digestive system, hunger comes on very slowly over the course of hours. If you have an unhealthy digestive system, you go from I feel fine to if I don't get fed, I'm going to be very hungry. So now we're going to explore how we can modify with our breath. That breath is a pattern, it's a system, and it's a mechanical system that we can control. And once you understand the mechanics, you can start changing your state or your mood on demand. So there are 5 levers that you're always pulling on, whether you realize it or not. The first is tempo, how fast you breathe. Fast breathing increases activation and energy. Slow breathing downregulates the system. The speed of your breath alone can shift you from stress to calm or from calm to intensity. Second is depth, how much air you move. The volume of air. Are you moving a thimble of air or a 5-gallon bucket? Shallow breaths keep you in survival mode. Deep breaths allow you to shift into thrive mode. It changes how your body feels or the intensity of life. Deep breathing is intentional and grounded, and shallow breathing is often adaptive or reactive. Third, the body focus, where the breath goes. Are you high chest breathing is associated with urgency and anxiety. Belly breathing brings grounding and stability. It's the same air, but a different location, and that provides a different experience. Fourth is the rhythm of your breath, the pattern of your breath. Erratic breathing causes instability or being nimble. Steady, consistent breathing builds regulation. Rhythm is what teaches your nervous system what to expect. And fifth is the airway. Are you breathing through your nose or your mouth? Nasal breathing slows things down and increases control. Mouth breathing increases intensity and emotional access. So if the chemistry of the breath is the engine, the tempo is the speedometer. It determines the velocity at which you move through your own experience. Most people go through life on autopilot, unaware that their breathing rate is both a symptom of their stress and a lever to relieve it. By consciously choosing your tempo, you're not just moving air, you're choosing a state of consciousness. Whether you need the high-octane activation of survival mode or the expansive ego-quieting stillness of a transcendent state, the speed of your breath is the primary dial you use to tune your nervous system. And we're going to discuss the different tempos with a steady rhythm. I'm going to go through the tempos of breath, and I'm going to do it from fast breaths to slow breaths. The first thing we're going to cover is 1 second inhale, 1 second exhale. That will give you 30 breaths per minute. That is a high activation overdrive state. Your nervous system is in a strong sympathetic activation. You are fight or flight dominant. You are getting ready to go. It's pretty close to hyperventilation. The CO2 is dropping quickly. Your blood vessels are starting to constrict, which is going to raise your blood pressure, and that blood pressure is raising so that you can be ready for activity, that this is preparing you to physically move with urgency. Because of that, your mind is rapid. It's frantically thinking. There's a lot of urgency and pressure. The emotions that you're going to feel are either energy or anxiety, agitation, that it has a high potential for panic, and that you are going to be reactive and impulsive. You are going to snap quickly. It can be useful intentionally if you are getting ready to do something that requires, if a tiger has jumped out of the woods, you need to be breathing at a second, one breath per second. Let's go. But it can appear in panic, intense states, and in certain breathwork phases for short bursts. In summary, it's basically for survival mode, maximum speed with minimum control.
I just did it while you were talking, and I feel hotter and uncomfortable.
Yes.
Just for what it's worth.
And if you were getting ready to do a workout, you would feel ready to go.
Oh, yeah. No, I feel like I could do some push-ups right now.
Absolutely. The next breath, 3 second inhale, 3 second exhale. This is a state of controlled activation. It is a mild sympathetic response with some activation. So you're in the fight or flight state, but not deep in it. It's an improved rhythm. It's still relatively fast. Your mind is alert. You're focused. You feel slightly pressured. Your emotions feel engaged. As slight tension remains, you're productive and action-oriented. You are ready to move forward. It's good for light activity, early regulation, and transition from stress to control. And it's functional, but not deeply regulated. I would also say, just as a matter of course, most people breathing, their normal breath is somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5 seconds.
I just did it, and it felt more comfortable, but still rushed.
Yes. Next, we're going to do 5 second inhale, 5 second exhale. This is the optimal regulation or the resonance zone. It is a balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic with peak vagal tone. This will give you your maximum heart rate variability score. It has the most efficient gas exchange within your lungs. Your mind is clear, stable, and focused. Your emotions, you feel calm and grounded. Your behavior is intentional and responsive. It's great for baseline training, stress regulation, and pre-performance. And this is the sweet spot of human regulation.
Any pause?
On all of these are independent of conscious connected breath work. This is just, and in our normal course of breathing, we automatically pause at the end of our exhale. That pause exists so that we can swallow, burp, cough. At the end of our exhale, there's a momentary pause.
So I was just doing it and counting, and because it's longer, it didn't feel like I had room to pause at the end of the exhale or the inhale, so I naturally fell into the conscious connected. But is the 5 in, 5 out, you could pause at the top or the bottom, and that's sort of independent of that breath cadence?
It's independent of that breath cadence. The number of people who have a natural 5-second breath is very rare. Somebody who has that as their natural cadence for breathing, it might happen while they're asleep, but somebody who has that cadence throughout their day intentionally created that at some point.
Yeah, it's very long.
Yeah.
I take relatively few breaths. I'd probably be below the average of number of breaths per minute, but there's no way I'm doing a 5-second inhale and exhale.
Yeah. And that gives you about 6 breaths per minute. Most of the mantras that people say, Mother Mary's, Ong Namo, quite a few of the mantras, when you say them out loud, it is a 5-second statement.
Oh.
That you are exhaling for 5 seconds while you speak your way through that, and then there's about a 5-second inhale, and then you say the mantra again. So that brings us to 7-second inhale, 7-second exhale, 4.3 breaths per minute. This is a deep calm, a downshift. Your nervous system is deeply in the parasympathetic system. You have a slower heart rate, increased relaxation. Your mind is quiet and spacious. Your emotions feel peaceful with less urgency, that you're slower and more deliberate about your life. This is great for anxiety reduction, pre-sleep, or emotional regulation. And it's the calm deepens and time begins to slow down, which the 7-second inhale, 7-second exhale, that's the tempo that I'm normally doing breath work at. 9 seconds in, 9 seconds out, 3.3 breaths per minute. The yogis in India believe that at 3 breaths per minute is where you begin to be in tune with the weather. You have a feeling for the consciousness of the earth when you're doing 3 breaths per minute. I have no idea if this is true because I couldn't breathe this way for that long. So 3.3 breaths per minute, meditative, and it's altered awareness. You're deeply in this parasympathetic dominance. This is a very slow respiration. You have an increased sense of interoception, which is the internal feeling of your body. There's minimal thought. You have present moment immersion, that you experience serenity and openness, expanded awareness, that you have subtle sensations increase. This is basically a meditative state of deep introspection and breathwork transitions. The mind loosens and awareness expands.
I just took 2 9-second inhales. I'm a little lightheaded. That's a super long inhale.
Yeah.
You're like full to the max.
So at 11 seconds, you're doing 2.7 breaths per minute. This is a profound parasympathetic state. You're extremely slow breathing. This is a high CO2 tolerance. Your mind is nearly quiet. The ego is offline. You're experiencing deep stillness. You're probably starting to slip into a sense of awe, and that boundaries are starting to dissolve, and you're experiencing timelessness. This is a more advanced practice. It is a deep meditation, and you're starting to enter into altered states without altering anything else. That you are approaching stillness, and because of this, your identity begins to soften. Before I began, ever heard of breathwork or started the breathwork journey, I remember one night I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast late at night in bed, and he talked about there were some monks that were doing a 1-minute inhale and a 1-minute exhale. And I thought I was a pretty good athlete at the time. I was like,
challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. I'm going to try this. I think I made it 20 seconds on the first exhale and was like, nope, not going to do that. I am not going to make it to a minute.
Tell me I'm wrong on this.
You're wrong.
Okay. Yeah. And I already know I'm wrong. But during breath work, I, f- I feel like if I did a 9, 10, or 11 second inhale exhale, that it would lighten the experience.
It depends on how prepared you are for it.
Okay.
If you've spent the time going comfortable breathing at 11 seconds in, 11 seconds out, and I can do that consistently for long periods, it's going to create another worldly experience. If, on the other hand, you're teetering on that edge of CO2 tolerance the entire time you're doing it, it's going to build your capacity to deal with panic.
Yeah, it's more so that I don't have the physiological comfort with that long of a breath to elicit the typical breath work response that I get from
Now,
a
that
5 or
said,
6 or 7
I,
second.
I have a bias towards the slow breathing. As we talked last week, your personality matches your breath, matches your personality. I have more consistent, slower tempo. If, on the other hand, you tried to get me to do a 1.5-second breath for 5 minutes, I'd be like 2 minutes in and having to tap out going, I can't do that. I can't breathe that fast, that consistently, that long. That's very difficult for me.
I think I have some stuff to experiment with tonight.
So the key patterns of the tempos, I'm just going to do this for as the tempo slows down. As the tempo of your breathing slows down, your heart rate variability goes up, your CO2 tolerance increases, your mind quiets, your awareness expands. Your nervous system, the sympathetic system goes down, parasympathetic goes up, the speed of your mind goes down, the noise of your mind goes down, and clarity increases. Emotionally, your reactivity will go down, your capacity will increase, and your perception will go from narrow to wide and from fragmented to unified. Breath tempo determines the speed at which you experience life.
Perception narrow to wide. Would you say that would be like less space to more space?
It's the difference between focus and awareness. And focus is, by definition, very narrow, that you are focused on the one thing. And awareness makes you take in the entire landscape. That a mother in the middle of the night is sleeping and hears her baby make a funny noise in the next room is at peak awareness. When I'm working and you have to turn the lights off and on to get my attention because I didn't hear you say my name 10 times, that is peak focus.
I had a theater director at one time that told me a good stage manager doesn't have their hands on everything. They have their fingers on everything. They know how to, not dictate, that's not the word, but
They're sensing.
yeah, in a sense. But yeah, that's what that brings to mind is just the ability to widen that narrow path, that parameter.
Yeah.
I want to make a really bad joke and I'm going to.
Thank you for telling us about it, though.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll give you a brownie for that later.
I'm going to eat half your brownie. I just want you to know that.
The co-host
that's
tax. So tempo is the speed of your breath. It determines how fast you're moving through the experience of life. But speed isn't the whole story because you can breathe fast and shallow or slow and deep. And that brings us to the next lever, depth. How much air you're actually moving. Now, it is a little difficult to separate tempo from depth, but those are two different things. I imagine there is some world where somebody could take an 11-second shallow breath. I can't imagine how they would actually do that,
Sounds horrible.
but it could happen. So depth and tempo, it realistically are not separate, but we're going to cover them as separate levers. Most people think a deeper breath just means more oxygen, and that's not actually what's happening. Your lungs aren't one big balloon. They're made of hundreds of millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. Alveoli. See, I got it right this
Look
week.
at
Kids.
you
I practiced.
winning.
A medical professional actually made fun of me for that last week and coached me up.
What? I'm glad they provided some constructive criticism instead of just making fun of you. It's helpful.
They had to pull themselves off the floor from laughing first before they could help me, but yes, they did. So the alveoli are where the gas exchange happens. When you breathe shallow, you're mostly using the upper chest, so only a small portion of those alveoli are involved. But when you breathe deeply into the belly, you reach the lower lungs where most of the little tiny air sacs are. So right away, you're using more surface area, which means more gas exchange more efficiently. What most people miss is not all your breath is useful. There's something called dead space, air that never reaches the air sacs. And with shallow breaths, A lot of each breath is wasted there in the dead space. With deep breaths, more air reaches where exchange happens. So you're not just breathing more, you're breathing more efficiently. And the lower lungs have better blood flow than the upper lungs. So deep breathing matches air with where the blood is showing up in your body. So deep breathing gives you more exchange and better efficiency. It's not about getting oxygen into your blood, it's about getting it into your cells. And that depends on how you breathe, not just how much.
Wait, what's the difference between getting in your blood versus your cells?
We covered that last week with the Bohr effect, that the carbon dioxide levels in your blood will determine how easily it is for the oxygen to separate from the hemoglobin and actually be delivered to the red blood cells.
Okay.
That you can have oxygen in the blood, but it's not going to be transferred efficiently into the cells. And the depth of that breath is going to make it more efficient for that oxygen to leave the blood and enter the cells. So depth changes how much of your lungs you're using and how efficiently you're exchanging air. But you can take a deep breath into your chest or a deep breath into your belly, and those create completely different experiences as well, which brings us to body focus. Where is the breath going? Most people don't realize they have a default pattern. If you're breathing into your belly, that's diaphragmic breathing. You're using your full lung, gas exchange is efficient, CO2 stays balanced, and your nervous system shifts into regulation. That's why belly breathing feels calm, grounded, and stable. If you're breathing into your chest, you're only getting partial expansion. It works, but it's less efficient for gas exchange and it physically takes more effort. CO2 becomes a little more unstable, and the nervous system is getting mixed signals that you're always slightly on edge. And then there's shoulder and neck breathing. This is where the body recruits accessory muscles up top to breathe. The breath is shallow, fast, inefficient. CO2 drops quickly. And because of the Bohr effect that we talked about last week, that Josh doesn't remember at all, oxygen delivery actually decreases. This is survival breathing. It is anxious, reactive, and keeps you always on. So the question isn't just, are you breathing? It's where is your breath going and what state is that creating? Also, in other news, it affects your voice. Neck breathing gives people a tight, high voice that projects better, while belly breathing lowers the register of your voice that's a little more intimate.
It's the sultry.
Yeah, like it's actually fairly difficult for me to speak loudly because of where my voice comes. Most people are walking around are chest breathing all the time because they think their lungs are in their chest, so they're constantly chest breathing. One, that takes a lot of effort because your ribs aren't very flexible. So it takes a lot of effort to get your ribs to move to chest breathe. But also it's telling you that you're in a mild state of anxiety. And because of that, you're in a mild state of anxiety.
And anxiety is for fighting bears, not writing emails.
Correct. So now we know where the breath is going, how that shapes your feelings and your state. Your state is your mood. But there's another layer because that is where the breath goes. It's how it flows over time, and that's rhythm. Rhythm is separate from tempo. This is the pattern your nervous system starts to recognize and respond to, because rhythm is what teaches your nervous system what to expect. If your breathing is erratic, constantly changing, your system stays unstable. This can feel like anxiety, or in some cases, being nimble but never settled. Like you may have a situation where you need to be nimble in it. Erratic breathing will help that. When your breath becomes steady and consistent, your nervous system starts to trust the pattern, and that's what creates regulation. When I first began breathwork, I noticed when I would try to take a smooth inhale, there would be catches or micro pauses. And I thought that was odd, that over time, with conscious, intentional practice, those catches largely vanished.
Is that the kind of catch you'll hear when a toddler's about to start crying?
Usually the catch you hear isn't when they start crying, it's usually at the end. That
Catching their breath.
Yeah, the whole reason that I have you do a double gasp at the beginning of breath work is that when you do that, it's sending a calming signal to your body and telling you to relax and calm down.
If I get a little freaked out with Hape or even during ceremony, I do that double breath.
Now, underneath the rhythm, we have the two forces of breathing, which we're all familiar with. The inhale, your inhale is going to activate you. It makes your heart rate go up, your sympathetic nervous system engages, and the exhale, which relaxes, your heart rate drops, the parasympathetic system comes online. So how you structure the rhythm of your breath matters which one of those is going to be dominant. If you have a 1-to-1 ratio, which is what we were doing earlier when we went through tempo, we just assumed a 1-to-1 ratio on all of those, that you have an equal inhale and an equal exhale. This creates balance and stability. You can change it so that you have a longer exhale, so that you have a 1-to-2 ratio that increases this. You have a longer exhale that increases CO2 and drives deeper calm and emotional releases. Or you can have a longer inhale, inhaling for 4 seconds, exhaling for 2 seconds. That's going to drop CO2 and increases activation and energy focus. And then you have something like conscious connected breathing, which is also a state of rhythm in which we move the pause from your breath. Continuous rhythm, no pauses. It's a slight emphasis on the inhale and a relax on the exhale. After you inhale, if you relax, your exhale is surprisingly going to be close to 1-to-1. So if we take a big, powerful inhale in conscious connected breathing and then relax on the exhale, it'll be a fairly powerful exhale. If you take a long, smooth inhale and then relax, it'll be a long, smooth exhale. I find it weird that those two match, that you would think if you just relax on the exhale, whatever you relax on the exhale, it would be the same every time, but it almost always matches the inhale.
If you tried to alter it, do you think you could sustain it, or would you naturally fall into more 1-to-1?
If you're altering it, you're not relaxing on the exhale.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Just thinking about it, it sounds like it would be very bumpy to try to force it, and it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they're doing breath work, they're doing a forceful inhale, forceful exhale. I don't like that.
Yeah, even though that isn't part of your rigmarole in the beginning, like you relax on the exhale.
You always relax on the exhale. That it's a mirror for what we do in life, that we exert ourselves, we put energy into something, and then we have to relax and watch the effects unfold. It is much like shooting an arrow, that there is a lot of effort, there's a lot of energy expended in pulling the arrow back, but once you let go, you don't get to control it anymore. You just have to let go and watch it, see where it lands.
And I imagine it changes the experience. Do you think it less effective?
If you are focusing both ways,
Oh yeah, I guess that is what it is, because you are focusing to put that
if
strenuous.
you're using effort on both sides,
Yeah,
it is one, you're going to become fatigued.
for sure.
Two,
That's why
that
nobody keeps it ever.
Maximum effort.
Yeah, no one ever keeps it up for a super long time.
Correct. They don't keep it up for a super long time, and it is a way to get people to relax on the exhale, because they eventually are just going to run out of juice.
Wouldn't know anything about that, Jake.
Yeah. So the continuous rhythm of conscious connected breath work drops the CO2, creating alkalosis, which increases neural excitability. So that is why it feels intense. So the first half of breath work is making it feel more intense. We are intensifying the experience that we're going through, but then we're relaxing on the exhale that is also calming the system at the same time. So we have increased energy and increased calm simultaneously, which is also weird. So we're activating in a controlled way so that we can experience release and openness.
That's really interesting, activating in a controlled way, but such an important small piece is like letting go of control, just relaxing.
Which brings us to rhythm teaches your nervous system what to expect. So rhythm teaches your nervous system what to expect. Steady breath creates stability. Erratic breath creates instability or being nimble. But even with the same rhythm, there's one more variable that can completely change the experience, and that's the airway, whether you're breathing through your nose or your mouth. Nasal breathing slows everything down. It increases control, builds CO2 tolerance, and even produces nitric oxide, which helps with blood flow and oxygen delivery. That's why nose breathing feels calm, controlled, and regulated. Mouth breathing does the opposite. It speeds things up, moves more air, drops CO2 faster. That increases intensity, activation, and emotional access, but it can also become dysregulating if you're not intentional or prepared. So in our practice, we use 3 main airway combinations. Breathing in through the mouth and out through the mouth. This is the most physically intense. It is the maximum airflow, rapid CO2 change, high energy, and strong physical sensation. This is where people feel the body the most during breath work. And they can feel like they've been hooked up to electricity. A lot of times when you hear people feel like they had energy flowing everywhere through their body, they were doing inhale through the mouth, exhale through the mouth. But you can also control the tempo of your breathing with your mouth as well, that the wider open your mouth is, the faster you're going to breathe. The more narrow you bring your mouth, the slower the tempo is. You'll notice when I did that very slow breath earlier, I had a very small opening in my mouth. It was like I was sucking through a straw. And then one of the other things about mouth breathing is that you can also put your tongue on the roof of your mouth to keep it from getting dry while you're doing in through the mouth, out through the mouth during breath work.
I didn't know that.
That's
Try that.
That's why I'm here, kids. That's why
I feel like such a beginner every time you say stuff.
That's why I make the medium to small bucks. Inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. This is the experience of the most sublime, transcendent, or maybe even mildly psychedelic experience. You get a controlled inhale, but a faster release. This is where insight, revelation, and those downloads tend to happen during breath work. I also have the personal belief, although I have absolutely no science to back this up, that the runner's high comes from breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Do you think that 1-to-1 ratio where your body naturally falls into the same time of exhale, is that still true when you are inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth?
Yes.
Interesting.
Inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the nose. This is the meditative breath. It is slower, controlled, more stable, and your mind goes quiet. It allows you to feel your emotions without needing to react to them. And there's also another breath that we intentionally do not practice. In through the mouth and out through the nose. We don't do this in breath work, but you'll see it show up naturally in life. Like when somebody gets frustrating news, they'll take a big inhale through the mouth and then forcefully exhale through the nose. It's actually a spontaneous grounding response.
I've tried doing that while exercising, and it's really weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah. So again, the question isn't just, are you breathing? It's how is the air moving and what state or mood or energy is that creating in you? So now we've covered all 5 levers. Each one changes the system on its own, but when you start combining them, that's when you gain real control.
You guys were talking about box breathing for anxiety, and actually inhaling through the mouth and exhaling through the nose is also really great for bringing those anxiety alarms down.
So that was the 5 levers we can control with our breath. The first is tempo, how fast you breathe. Speed alone can shift you from stress to calm or calm to intensity. Second is depth, how much air you move. Are you breathing in a thimble or a 5-gallon bucket? Shallow breath keeps you in survival. Deep breath keeps you towards thriving. Third is body focus, where the breath goes. High chest breathing creates urgency. Belly breathing creates grounding. Same air, different location, completely different experience. Fourth is rhythm, the pattern of your breath. Erratic breathing creates instability. Steady breathing builds regulation. Rhythm teaches your nervous system what to expect. And fifth is airway, nose or mouth. Nasal breathing slows things down and gives you control. Mouth breathing increases intensity and emotional access. Here's an important disclaimer. Don't try to control all of them at once. Just change one lever at a time and you'll see how your whole system responds. I have this belief that your breath is one of the most powerful levers for change in your life because it sits right on the edge between conscious and the unconscious. Your breath is happening automatically all day, every day, you don't have to think about it, thankfully. And yet, at any moment, you can step in and take control. That's rare. There are very few systems in your body that are both automatic and controllable. That is what makes the breath so powerful. It's a bridge. It's a bridge between what's happening to you and your influence on how you respond. When you begin to bring awareness to your breath, when you notice it, slow it down, modify it, you're training the ability to notice what was previously automatic, and then to intervene. Because most of life isn't actually conscious, it just feels that way. In reality, most of our thoughts, emotions, and reactions are patterns running in the background. You don't consciously tie your shoes or drive a car, those are subconscious patterns. And emotionally and mentally, the same thing is happening. That you have a trigger and a reaction, a stress and a tension, an emotion and a behavior, that there's no pause and no choice. But when you train your breath, the gap between experience and response widens. This is the space that we were talking about earlier. Now it becomes trigger, awareness, breath, and then response, and that's the whole game. Because what we call being stuck is usually just being unaware of the pattern that's running. And what we call change is simply becoming aware enough to interrupt it. And breath is the fastest way to do this. Because it doesn't require to figure your life out. It doesn't require insight or strategy. It just takes noticing and shifting. And over time, what happens is you don't just breathe better. You become someone who notices more, reacts less, and responds intentionally. And that's the real transformation. When you make your breath conscious, you don't just change your breathing, you change your relationship to everything that used to run automatic.
What was so compelling is once I made the connection between my breath and what was going on, whether that was doing a hard workout or a long, slow workout, and seeing how my breath correlated with that, and then doing breath work and having a profound experience and seeing that, just comparing it to music where there are only a handful of notes, but the way you put them together can create a wildly different experience. I found that interesting enough, despite my skepticism about the way people would talk about it, to dive in and just play around.
I definitely had the experience of realizing that your breath changes with your mood and your state. And I knew breath could control that. I had no idea that it could create transcendent experiences and was entirely skeptical, even after I had powerful ayahuasca experiences, that I was skeptical of that. And I think one of the energetic things that you just said, you've talked about, you can just put musical notes together and that'll create a different emotion. You can play a single note and go, oh, that's a happy note. And then you can play another note and go, oh, that's a sad note. And we all agree, and I find that weird and unusual that we can go, why is that sad? But it is. And it's, why is that breath stressed? Because that's how stress breathing works.
Yeah, absolutely. I still have experiences with that. You made a comment before that sometimes when Jake says seemingly the most basic thing about breathworks, like it's like I'm being reintroduced to this idea all over again. I feel like a beginner. And in that experience, I think that's what reignites the curiosity, instead of coming in here and just doing what I know how to do and what I'm comfortable with and what I know will lead to a good experience, taking some of those levers and just changing one thing at a time continues to create novel experiences, for sure.
In your defenses, I'll read all the scientific papers about breathwork, and it is shocking to me that I'll read a scientific study and they'll explain something about breathwork that I know the fundamental basics of what they're talking about, but they'll say it in such a way that I go, huh, that's a lot better than how I've been saying it. This hurts my feelings. How dare this nerd out-wordsmith me?
That's like reading a book that just, same thing, says something that you know, just in a way that's different from what you've processed before, and you just got to put the book down and like stare into space for 20 minutes. Yeah, I feel like
Well,
it's the same experience.
Most people spend their lives looking at the pattern from the inside. It's like looking at the backside of the fabric, and the pattern that's there isn't as clear as it is from the outside. And that's how we view our life, that we see the tangled threads of stress, reactivity, and unconscious loops, and we assume this is just how life is. But what we've explored today is something very different. You are not just inside the pattern, you're influencing it in real time. Your tempo, your depth, the rhythm, the body focus, which airway, these aren't little details. They are the mechanics of your experience. They are the shuttles on the loom of the fabric of life. And when you don't see them, life feels random, reactive, and monotonous. But the moment you become aware of them, you move from unconscious repetition to conscious creation. You stop being a byproduct of your patterns, and you become the author of your life and your moods and your responses. Because even the parts of you that feel chaotic, reactive, or stuck, they're not wrong, just unskillful because of a lack of awareness. And breath is what brings them into awareness. So don't try to change everything at once. Just one breath, one lever, one moment of awareness, and let that ripple through everything in your life. I want to leave you with a poem that captures this perfectly. It's called The Weaver. The author is anonymous, but it's often attributed to B.M. Franklin. My life is but a weaving between my God and me. I cannot choose the colors, he weaveth steadily. Oftentimes he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent, and the shuttle ceases to fly, will God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. He knows, he loves, he cares. Nothing this truth can dim. He gives the very best to those who leave the choice to him. And that was The Weaver. How you breathe is how you live. Take a slow, conscious breath.